Gruesome Magazine.
Hello, once again, I'm your host, Doc Rotten, and this is Gruesome Magazine, where we review the very latest in theatrical and streaming movies. Each week, the Gruesome Magazine Grue-Crew and I will take a look at very spooky, scary, and gory genre offerings. Yes, this week we're reviewing DARIO ARGENTO PANICO, streaming on SHUDDER.
Yay.
Fear is for beginners.
Sure.
I didn't even see it. Where was
that's
that?
That's a tagline. We'll get to that in a minute.
Oh,
That's the line he uses in the movie. But,
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Let me before we get to the review, let me introduce the crew, and I'll just stumble over every word I say. Starting off with the one and only Jeff Mohr. Jeff, how you doing, sir?
I am wunderbar.
Oh, wait, that's
Oh, wait, that's German. Yeah, like that's
yeah,
totally
whatever.
effed up right there.
We're stateside. It's European. We'll give it to
I'm
you.
good,
All
I'm
right. Also joining this week is Crystal Cleveland, the living dead girl. How you doing?
I'm great. Okay. Yeah. See, I can't. Okay.
Yeah.
So I need a writer.
Fantastic.
Okay?
Fantastico.
I need her. I'm fantastic.
There we go.
There you go.
There we go.
All right. Also joining this week's award-winning filmmaker, Christopher G. Mohr.
Crystal, but I love your deep red light behind you. It's a real phenomena there.
Phenomenal.
And that's my favorite.
It's
Too.
almost like you're in front of an inferno.
Creepers. Yeah. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm done.
Do you need some black glasses to
Dark
cover
glasses.
your
Dark
eyes?
glasses.
Oh,
dark
dark.
Glasses. You're not even using the right title.
Jeez Louise.
Quit while you behind.
Yeah, I will.
Go to the opera. Go to the opera. All right. Why are we doing this? I don't know, but let's keep going. What we are reviewing tonight is the documentary about Dario Argento called DARIO ARGENTO PANICO, coming to SHUDDER. We are excited to be doing this. A lot of really cool documentaries about filmmakers over the past few years, and this is added to the list. But before we get into this, we hope you what we'll do. Let me explain what we're going to do. Just sit down. We're going to don't walk away. Don't walk away. What we're going to do is we're going to give you our first impression. Then we're going to dive into a discussion about the film. There's really not any spoilers, really, truly. But then we'll give you a score and our favorite scene. Of course, we hope you enjoy not only this review, but many others that we have on the site. And if you do, please hit the like, subscribe, and share with a friend. Especially subscribe. Every click, every one of those will help us find another horror fan just like you. We're on this.
Yes, just like you. Just like you.
All right, let's take a look at the card. Boink. Dario Argento Panico. I got a 2023 in there, but it's 2024. Available streaming on SHUDDER beginning February 2nd, 2024. The synopsis is in the secluded ambiance of hotel rooms, Dario Argento crafted his greatest cinematic creations. Stumble. Seeking solace from the outside world to delve into his nightmares. Now he finds himself in a hotel room to return to the very setting that ignited his creative fervor to conclude his latest script and participate in an intimate interview, all while being followed by a film crew documenting his life for a movie about his illustrious career. All right. Directed by Simone Scafidi. Written by Simone Scafidi, Manlio Garmasca. I feel like I mispronounced that one. Giada Mazzolini. The cast includes Dario Argento, Fiore Argento, Asia Argento. Aja, her too. Vittorio Cacciagordi, Guillermo del Toro, Christina Marshallach.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Gasparino, Claudio Simonetti, Michele
Soave.
Thank you. Nicholas Winding Refn, and Lamberto Bava, among others.
Yes. So the Aja, it was Jeff that schooled me on the Aja.
Oh, was
not
it?
Asia.
You'll always be Asia then.
I look him up and we
know.
do a movie with him.
It's so hard. I had no idea. I'd been saying Asia forever. I was like, wait, what? It's Aja. Well, that makes sense, of course.
It does.
But,
It does.
Mhm.
Well, it's Western.
Has she ever worked with Joe Dante?
Ah.
Never mind.
All right,
Don't
let's
create more
find.
bad comments.
I'm a glutton. I'm a glutton. Joe
You
Dante.
are just
Joe Dante.
You
That's
can't. You
right.
gotta let that hate. You gotta
Send
let hate
all of it to
just
Jeff.
go.
All of it to
Because-
Joe
Hey, that's
Dante.
friendly exchange.
All right. Good gosh almighty. Let's get into this. Starting off with Christopher G. Mohr. What was your first impression of Panico?
I absolutely love this. I mean, I am a, I love any kind of documentaries on filmmakers or people who make film and or documentaries about like specific movies and that kind of stuff. And this film's interesting because it really it takes you so many different paths. You go behind the sort of the artistry of Argento and how he does things, but you also go into his personal life. You go into how he works with actors and how some he works well with, like his daughter, but still has issues, or other people he has issues with. And, also the issue of making films and how that changed once he delved into making stuff for like the American market. So, it's really interesting, learning all these different things and getting to know him as an artist. And I by the end, I actually got a little teary eyed because I felt a kinship and I felt seen, because there's some phrases they use at the very end that I feel that and I understand that as a filmmaker, and I know how that is, because I think there's even a part where he talks about like he makes cinema because he wants to be loved, and I was like, oh man, I guess that's the main thing. Sometimes when you create, you want people to see it and love it. So, but yeah, I loved all the behind the scenes stuff on the making of some of these things, and also I love it when they take it beyond the normal documentary format. And when they had like they had one of the actors set up in the actual, I guess it was the actual opera house from Opera, and they did some really cool visual stuff that almost felt very Argento and how they shot it. I love that aspect of it. And I love it when they put some artistry in it, to where it's not just talking heads. It's not people just talking in a room about stuff. I think my only complaint, there's a few times where they just showed stationary stuff, which I'm sure it had more to do probably with rights or whatever. I would love to see like drawn out scenes, but they still played some of the dialogue and music and stuff from certain things. But yeah, I really love this documentary. I think it's very insightful, and as a filmmaker, it hit very close to home. It really, the ending of it inspired me, and it just gave more of a perspective on me as a filmmaker and how he's no different. I mean, granted, I'm not, even just his his introverted aspect of his life is kind of interesting as well. So, and also just the being in a writing binge the last few days, him like holding away, writing by himself. I really felt seen with that as well. But anyway, I really love this documentary. I think it's a really wonderful, well done documentary.
Nice, got a new kinship there. All right, I like that. Crystal, what was your first impression of Panico?
Oh, I love this too. Like, okay, so I do love Argento films. Like, I love giallo type films. His are probably some of the best because, they tend to make a little bit more sense than some of the others. Although people would disagree with me with Suspiria, but I would fight that. But I love how much they dig into, it gets really personal to me. It's odd. They talk about some really personal things, but shockingly, this family is they seem pretty well adjusted for all the stuff. Like, I always thought it was weird how he shot Aja, in certain ways and stuff. But after seeing this, I kind of get it. I'm like, no, you were not, she wasn't your daughter. Like, here's the reality. Any man shooting a woman like that, it shouldn't matter who it is, because they should never look at her or that person as a sexual object. So the fact that he does apparently, he seemed in that way, he's very professional. It's actually the opposite of what you would think, even though it seems weird. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense.
It does. It does indeed. Yes.
Yeah. So to be able to shoot your daughter in that way, he really does only think about his job and what he's doing, and he's not necessarily sexualizing. And I agree with that one director that was talking about, like, the way his stuff is shot. It's not meant to like titillate, if that makes sense. It's tantalizing, but not titillate, which is different. You know, he's really such an interesting person. And I love that he even was open enough to admit to like these intrusive thoughts. You know, I mean, because I would be lying if I didn't say that I saw a window high up somewhere and didn't think about like jumping through and stuff like that. Like I do have to say that a lot of the best creatives I have ever known in my life, a lot of the best artists think like that. Think differently, think oddly, have these sort of, you know, things roaming around in their brains. And really, I love hearing the daughters talk about how equal he was to each of them. I just learned so much about him, and it gave me a whole new respect for him. Actually, I've always liked him as a director and a filmmaker, but I always, like I said, I always had this kind of weird thing in the back of my head with the way, and now I'm like, oh God, I was so wrong. I feel like I was wrong on that. I feel like I saw it in the wrong way. And so I actually came out of this with a lot of respect for him, being able to do what he did. And let me tell you, just like him saying, I don't believe that he said, my daughter is my favorite actress because it was his daughter. I really, truly think that they work so well together that's why he felt that way. Like, it's so interesting. Yeah, I loved it. I learned so much. I loved all the stories. I loved that he was kind of detached from it in a way. And they put a little funny little kind of wraparound, because I don't think that he's really that hateful toward the hotel. Although that was very funny. So yeah, I enjoyed it. Cool. Sorry.
Well, I wonder if that's just his sense of humor, because
I
he
think that was meant to be
say he's
funny.
humorous, but then it's
Yeah,
also
I
under.
think that was funny. Mhm.
Jeff, what was your first impression of Panico?
I too enjoyed this a lot. This is something I'm going to watch several times, partly because it's the vast majority of it is in Italian, so you need to follow along
Yeah.
with the subtitles. But there was so many things in there that set me thinking that I'd catch myself thinking about something somebody said and then come back to and know that I missed some other things in there. So it's very intriguing. One of the things I found really interesting was all these different people describing Dario Argento, and they were all different, I thought, and quite a bit, you know. And I found the little things interesting, like, I mean, we can't really spoil a documentary, right?
Not really.
I just, the woman, the actress that was the lead in Opera, she talked about how he was so gentle and so quiet, how he always talked to her so quiet and everything. And then we see a bunch of scenes of him on set wildly yelling and waving his arms around, you know, and I'm like, wait a minute. So he's behaving according to the person he's dealing with, which I would think would be a good trait. So, and I too love the stuff that Asia said, that all the different insights that she had and her experience and relationship, and the some sort of disappointments and understanding why and that kind of stuff. So I enjoyed the heck out of it. And anyway, I don't know what else to say other than I'm going to watch this several times. I think there's a lot of depth to it.
A lot of depth. I like that. This documentary was quite an exploration for me of the artist, because of all the iconic horror directors, Argento is probably the one that's least familiar for me. I really haven't truly understood or really grasped the full, the full value of his work. Value is not the right word, but you get the full scope of his work until probably the past 10 years or so, as we started in Decades of Horror and we're exploring the films on with a purpose. And it's given me a whole new insight and respect for him as an artist that I literally didn't have before. Not that I disliked him. I knew he was a great artist because I was told he's a great artist. Now I know why I think he's a great artist for the past 10 years. And this particular documentary was really engaging for me, for learning a lot of new aspects about him. And so you get a variety of things. You get the respect of some, comrades, some, Guillermo del Toro and Refn and other directors, and they have this utmost respect for him. And then you get his family involved. You get his daughters and other members of the family, and you get fellow actors, and you get insight into stories, how he may or may not have worked well with an actor or so. Maybe an actor came banging on a door in the middle of the night. So what's interesting is it really delved into different aspects of him as a family man, as an artist, as a human being, as a tortured soul. But I feel like even with all that, I think it only scratched the surface. I feel like there's so much more to be revealed about this man. And there's so much here, but I got the impression as we, with that final shot that, we'll talk about here in light, that, it's just like, there's so much more. We could have another documentary and same amount of time and learn be talking about entirely different things. This is very much a career path kind of thing, and where his mind was. And it is, as Crystal was saying, it's also very intimate in some of the challenges he encountered, self-doubt, depression, and then also a positive side, if you will, with his family, and how the love of the family and his parents and what they accomplished, and how his father believed in him and guided him early in his career. There's so much going on here. And it also kind of bleeds out into, what the cinematic landscape was during this long period of time, since basically just, I guess 1965, you really want to get into it, but 1970 when he was directing, but he, as a writer, when they brought him in to do, how was it? How the West Was Won? I feel like
Once Upon a Time in the West.
Once Upon a Time in the West. Yes. Thank you, Jeff. I knew you knew what it was. And he was, and the reason why he was brought in is totally interesting. So this is a very touching, insightful, respectful documentary that reveals a lot about the person, the craft, and their career. Really, really great. I loved it.
Well, they do a really great job of not only having the current Argento, but then they have all these older interviews with him. I love the moment where the guy makes him empty his pockets, and he has all these unique things, and you find out all these years later he's like weird things in his pocket.
I got a pebble.
The train,
a little
train.
stone. Oh God!
Well, I love that aspect of it, and we're even like we're talking about him not having issues with this girl, and then like Jeff said, she talks nice about it, but he talks a lot earlier about how he made that one film and he had all these problems with the actor, and the actor was knocking on his door, wanting to beat him up. And then later on, when the film did well, he's like, oh man, we work great, so great together. And so it is kind of funny how they have a different opinion of it if something's successful. Like he also mentions a producer that he had run-ins with, and producer's like, oh man, this works so well. It's like you were gonna firing towards the end. So I think the interesting aspect of it is they cover so many different elements of his life and his artistry that a lot of times could be scattered and not feel like it's all the same thing, but they do a great job of incorporating it to where it flows well, and it all gets kind of integrated together because it's all about his life. And you get everything from how, because he's known for having a lot of female leads and shooting a lot of, the female figure. And he learned that from his mom, his mom being a photographer. So he talked about how he just thinking about her, he still smells like the makeup, So yeah, you just learn those early elements of his life and all, as someone that's a filmmaker and makes horror films, I can understand dealing with that dark half of yourself, and using that as sort of, and also just being inspired by your life and people around you. There's so many interesting aspects of it, just how like some of the characters are reflected by his issue to where that one film his wife thought, is this about us? Do we have problems? So yeah, I just, I think when it comes to Argento, I've got a Suspiria girl hanging from her neck, Suspiria thing hanging from my rearview mirror in my car right now. And I have a character that I wrote in a script that's called Julian, that's based on Julian Sands from Phantom of the Opera. So, so you have all these things in your, and when you think of Argento, you think about the basic elements, like the things that Dave hates is the colored lights. A lot of times you have the colored lighting scheme on certain things, or the giallo aspect of it. But this one, I feel like we definitely peeled away the layers and we learned so many different aspects of it, just from his directing style or artistry, how he works with actors, all the behind the scenes on the making of it. And also just family life. You learn so many different things about this, and it's so just tirelessly interesting to where it's like, oh man, you feel like you could learn a whole lot more even when the film ends. And I think how the film wraps up is just perfection, because you have all these different people giving their ideas of what they think about Argento. And like Jeff said, it's like everybody has a different idea, but they all seem correct in some way, and
the opera chick, they're like, who is he? And she's like, I don't know.
She's like, the only one that he doesn't know. The question
like messed him. Well, no, I think the point is no one knows.
Well, yeah, nobody knows about Argento.
That's really what it is.
Yeah.
And that smile at the end is something. See, to me, he's fascinating because, like Doc mentioned, he treats everyone the way that they expect or need to be treated. And I'm kind of the same way. Like, I treat one person differently from another because I know one person can handle it, one person can't, one person says, like, he's so interesting.
Well, he says he makes movies because he wants to be liked.
Loved. Yeah.
Loved. And quickly, the other thing that I thought was interesting, that they asked a series of people about his change, right? After opera, I guess, that people sort of looked at that as a downturn somewhat. And you got all kinds of different answers. One person thought it was because that was when his father died. And another one thought it was changes in audience tastes. And another one thought it was changes in the industry with television and funding dominating and controlling things. And so I just found all of that to be very interesting, because everything is connected in one way or another.
Well, also he's something that I think about. It talks about how he's two different people. He's filmmaker Argento, and then he's non-filmmaker Argento. And I'm award-winning Christopher G. Mohr on one level, and on another level, I'm just Christopher G. Mohr. Christopher G. Mohr. But I'm, and it's him being a character, which is also very appropriate how they talk about that he saw it because of the way he acts as a director. When he's in director mode, he's like, oh, this guy could be a good actor. So I do like that. I like that aspect. And again, there's that kinship for me as someone that, like, when I'm in director mode, I have to be this I have to be this character of some sort in my own little play, I guess, or movie, because I have to be this, be in director's mode. And outside of that, you're introverted or this or that. yeah, there's just so many, and also just when it gets down to the nitty gritty of his family and stuff, especially Aja, because that's an interesting thing to begin with. I guess, we talked, you mentioned that earlier, Crystal, just like the weird thing. I as somebody, like, if I ever had a kid, I'm not sure I could direct a sex scene with them. It would just be very weird. But he's worked with so many movies with her, and he trusts her and gets good performances out of her.
Well, and like I said, I truly think he doesn't look at that as sexual. That is part of the movie. That's all it is. It's not, it's fun. It's a funny thing on set because, I've had to kiss people on set and stuff. And people are like, oh, is it weird and awkward? No, not really. But it's definitely not sexy.
Well, you have to shoot it from a different angle.
Yeah.
Really.
It's just a different thing. But whatever is happening in front of the camera isn't real. And it doesn't feel real when you're making it. It's an odd thing. And I think that that's what's so fascinating, because I think he really does detach. I think a lot of directors don't. I think we know that some directors are just blouses and pieces of poo, but I truly think he respects women so much, and that makes me love him a lot.
Well, but the thing is, he's detached in that way, but he's also much more integral. Like the whole opening is him helping with the sound design.
Yeah.
And also he's known for being the guy who wears the gloves in a lot of the scenes where it involves the close-up of hands. He usually wears the gloves. So he's integral in that part of it.
Well, I think she also talked about I feel stupid for not remembering her name, but the lead actress in opera, I think, was the one that was talking about how he talked to me about how he wanted me to do it. And then he goes over and talks to the cameraman on how they want to shoot it. And then he goes over to the lighters and how he wants it lit. And that he was intricately involved in all of that.
That's how you get perfection. That's how he gets what he wants,
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was funny, too, that his daughter said she was bummed out that she was 16 years old and he still hadn't asked her to be in one of those movies. But I can see how that would seem like a long time, especially if you're raised with that.
Yeah, but it's also, revealing that, it's not always perfect. Like when she wouldn't be in the film and she wanted to direct her second film, they ended up not speaking for a couple of years. Yeah. So you do get both sides of the story, right?
That irks me for her, because that's not fair for him to do that.
But he's human, right? I agree with what you're saying, but it just exposes that he's very, very human as well. So even, with the fears about depression, every time starts a film, that's the thing that bubbles up to the surface.
Here's what I'm saying. That's where he's not thinking like a director when he reacted that way. He was thinking like a father. Okay. So at that moment, Aja was his daughter versus when he knows that he's on set with her, she's in a safe place.
Mm-hmm.
He's protecting her. He can make sure he puts out the best for her. I bet there was a lot of things going on in his brain with that. For one, he's probably a little jealous that she's going to work with someone else as his daughter. He's like, damn, that's my baby. For two, he's probably concerned about, how the set's going to be. If it's going to be, there's so much in the head. That's why I think I like this so much. Yeah. There's so many different facets to this. I find it so, so very interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's a really good balance of the very intimate stuff like that, and then the very outside looking in stuff, from the other directors who are looking at his work and not necessarily at, the family aspect of everything. Even if they do know about it, they're looking at what ends up on the screen and, talking about the mastery and the artistry. And even one director was saying that, years from now, they'll look back at him as, as like Picasso or another artist, or I think they use Andy Warhol as one of the examples they use.
Yeah.
Because he's definitely got that avant-garde type. It's definitely still out there.
Well, look how much Suspiria is has made an impression on filmmakers, and and is basically the poster child for giallo, as that's the screaming example of that. And I think that's always going to be something that's going to stand out to people, and but yeah, I think, and I think also it's interesting how he talked about how there was a moment, like I guess after the 80s or whatever, where he kind of lost some of his spark, but also how like he would just like try to overuse the money so he could just do crazier and crazier things. Because I think one of my favorite moments is the behind. I forgot which film it is, but it's is it Tenebrae, where the camera is moving all over the place and goes inside the house.
There is. Yeah, there's a really long shot.
Yeah, and I remember I watched it, I guess in the last year or whatever. I watched it again, and it's like, man, even though I was watching, I was like, yeah, well, the music, yeah, but I love just that shot and just how they sort of showed the behind the scenes of the camera and how they're doing it and stuff. I just got giddy like a schoolgirl watching that. But yeah, also talking about the music, how the music changed.
Goblin, yeah, especially with Goblin.
Innovative, like that. Like
70s rock to electronica.
Still, and people still love that and use that today. Now I know I can't remember his name, the Danish dude who did Neon Demon that was on there. Yeah, like I see a lot of that influence big time with Neon Demon.
Yeah, the lighting and the sound, music and stuff.
Yeah,
he's definitely
I love Neon
inspired
Demon.
by him.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Let's give our score, 1 to 5, and our favorite scene, or in this case, favorite thing that came up. I don't, because there's not really any scenes except maybe the final scene, which is really shot like a scene. But anyway, Christopher, you're up first. Give us your score and favorite scene.
Yeah, you know what? I think because it really hit home for me so much. I have to give it a 5.
Yeah,
I think I literally cried at the end, which maybe it's just because I haven't had much sleep in the last 3 days. But because what was it? I mean, I loved how his explanation, how what was it? Terror is a phase that beginners provoke. I'm looking for panic, which is something more. It's a deeper penetration. And just how he talks about like terror is just having this fever. Panic is having the fever, but it causes delirium.
Yeah.
And I just love that. I love that explanation for his artistry when it comes to the films he makes. And or even where Aja says she talks about how she brought this award home and her father did. It doesn't mean anything. And but then she kind of used it to rationalize that the film is the prize. It's not the awards you win for it. The film is the prize. And also how when the guy wanted to cast him for a film and he's like, I'm too young for that. And it talks about how he's an everlasting teenager. And I was like, for me, all that stuff, the dark half, all that stuff, I felt a kinship with him. So as for favorite part of it, I think it's the line where, why am I getting emotional? Do you know why you make cinema? I do what I do because I want to be loved. And I was like, that's me. That's me. Because as somebody who hasn't really found that kind of love when it comes to relationships and stuff.
Okay.
You create art so that you can find love, because when you make a film, that's your baby, that's your child. So for me, that hit a little too home. Again, I'm working off probably 10 hours of sleep in the last 3 days. So that's more of the result of it. But I think I just love that line I'm going to take to my grave is something that just defines me as a filmmaker. So nice. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be crying.
No, I love it. No, I love it. The best thing in the world is when we find others that we can relate to on a level like that. You think you're the only one, but then you realize you're not alone, and you aren't alone, Christopher. I mean, like I said, I related to far too much of this probably more than I care to admit to, with like the intrusive thoughts and
Yeah.
stuff. But
Same.
I am also going to give it a 5. You know, I rate these differently.
Wow.
This is
Yeah,
probably one of the best documentaries I have seen. I mean, I loved the Nightmares and Dreams as much,
Mhm.
but other than these, I mean, man, it's good, y'all. Like, even if you, I think even if you don't really necessarily like Dario Argento films, I still think it's very interesting. It's interesting to see the course of his life because you really do see the progression. And anyway, I'm getting off track. My favorite is actually it's right at the beginning, because I had this image of Dario that was immediately shattered when he talked about his mother being a photographer and how she elevated women. And you could tell when he was talking about that he felt the same way. He feels the same way. I had such a different impression and image of him because he uses so many females. You almost think maybe he's, you know, no, he really just loves women, and it's not a sexual thing. It just is.
Yeah. She instilled that in him. Yeah.
Yeah. And that changed I mean, and it was at the beginning. I'm glad that the editor was clever, because putting that at the beginning immediately just got me right into it, because I was like, oh, I'm fascinated. And then just watching it, and it explains like how strong Aja is. Like she's a force. Everyone knows she's a force. She's a powerhouse, just in her domineering nature and everything about her. And you know, a weak man doesn't raise a strong daughter. And so I find him very fascinating. That's all. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Jeff, let's have it.
I'm gonna go 5 too. I mean, it's hard for me to look at this and say there's something not there that I wanted to see, or there was something wrong with it. It does make me want to dig a little more, because it's you know, just it's easy to gloss things over this is really kind of it's an analysis and a tribute, but there's but I also it makes me want to go back and look at the films of his that I haven't seen, because I haven't seen all of them. I've seen maybe
me neither. I haven't seen them all.
So with that said, favorite, people have talked about this. I mean, Christopher sort of mentioned this, but when he defined panic and then sort of said it wasn't definable, you know, do you think about it? What is panic, you know? And that made me think, you know, I'm like, yeah, what is panic? What is it? What are the things that put you, you know? So I don't know. There's just a lot of food for thought in this film.
Food for thought. That's one way to put it. Yeah. I had 4.75, and I kind of go, well, I should have given it a 5. But it's the same thing. I mentioned at the beginning that it feels like it just scratched the surface. I mean, it's very satisfying, but I feel like there's so much more. There's so much more below the surface that you could dig into. But maybe that's for another documentary. So there's a lot going on here. I'm actually going to steal 2 here. One was, I think it was his sister was talking about how he told her that in the 40s, when he was a wee child, because I think he was born in 1940, so like,
dear God,
according to, he's like five or younger, and he was all the bombings in his hometown, and that he, I think she said that he exorcised those demons by talking about them with her, and something. So it was interesting that was an interesting foundation for how he's kind of approached all these as he's matured. And then the other thing is like putting the dresser in front of the window.
Yes.
And him explaining that, you have these thoughts.
The psychiatrist was smart.
Right. And it was
yeah.
And he says that, it's suicide is a fleeting emotion most of the time. And with the dresser there, by the time he got it all moved and everything, it was gone. So I was like, it kind of never really saw it in that respect, in that light. So there's insight in here. There's things to be found that are intimate yet universal. So really, really good. I'm going to change it to a 5. Shit.
Yay!
Yay! This is like the first. I think this is the first time ever we've all given something all 5. So
I mean,
that's
really,
amazing.
it really
close.
is probably
Deserves it.
one of the best, if not the
Mm-hmm.
best, documentary about a horror filmmaker. Opened my eyes to a lot. Yeah.
And I know you said that we could see more, but this was what, an hour and a half? Like, still. And I was riveted the whole time. And that's crazy.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I wish it covered more films, you know.
Yeah.
It skipped a few, but not many.
Yeah.
Skipped a lot in his later career.
Well, yeah. And I guess it would have been nice to see some of these other people, like what's her name, who was in Phenomena, and some of these other actors.
Jennifer Connelly.
Connelly, but I'm sure they couldn't afford her.
But he helped make her, so you know,
Yeah.
she probably reveres him. I would, Christopher. If I ever become a big superstar, I'll be like, fuck yeah, I'll do that. Christopher. I'll do whatever.
Nice. All right, well there you go.
Sorry, I didn't mean to say that.
Our review, yeah, of course you did. This is our review of Dario Argento Panico, which is a documentary streaming now on Shudder. Check it out. I think, regardless of what you think about the director, if you're a horror fan, you've got respect for the director, I would imagine, in some fashion. I think there's a lot to discover here. Motivation behind the filming, the thoughts that go into it, the craft, the artistry, even from the lights to the music to casting to everything, like we've discussed in the past 41 minutes. So there you go. Crystal, Christopher, Jeff, thank you for joining me. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
Talk about this.
All right. Leave your comments down below. Okay, everybody, let's say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Gruesome Magazine.